ever feel like foreign policy is a puzzle? Like you're missing a few pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're handing you a big one today.
Yeah.
The realist perspective on the war in Gaza.
Yeah.
And get this.
Okay.
Some serious experts in this field are looking at the situation saying, this isn't just a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
This is a strategic blunder.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just about disagreeing with tactics or anything. It's like you said, it's about understanding the long game.
Right.
What are the consequences?
Exactly.
What happens next?
So when we say realists, though,
Right.
we're not talking about like heartless robots who just ignore the human cost.
Not at all.
Right.
Realism acknowledges the moral concerns, absolutely.
Okay.
But it really puts them in this bigger picture.
Okay.
Understanding what are the limits of force?
Right.
And how can today's victory become tomorrow's
Nightmare. No unintended consequences.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the Soviet Union and Afghanistan, right?
Oh, yeah.
A superpower
Right.
gets dragged into this conflict
Right.
that plays a role in its downfall.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
And that brings us to our deep dive today.
Okay.
We've got Stephen Walt's piece
Yes.
from Foreign Policy magazine,
Right.
Why Realists Oppose the War in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
And he lays out a really interesting argument
Yeah.
about why the school of thought thinks this could do more harm than good.
And he pulls in these historical examples, too.
Yeah.
Like, it's really interesting.
Theoretical.
No. It's very concrete.
Yeah. Like, how does power actually work?
Right.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into some of these arguments.
Okay.
Walt's first point really jumped out at me.
Okay.
He says straight up crushing an enemy
Mm-hmm.
rarely works long term,
Right.
especially when you're dealing with intense nationalism.
You might win the battle.
Yeah.
But then what?
Right.
You create martyrs.
Right.
You create resentment.
Yeah.
It just gets worse.
It's that whole win the battle, lose the war thing.
Exactly. And history's full of them.
Right.
Look at Vietnam.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just about that conflict zone either, right?
Right.
This war impacts America's image in the world.
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way, no.
He's talking about blowback.
Major blowback.
Yeah.
It just makes the U.S. look like, well, a hypocrite, frankly.
Okay, so not exactly the leader of the free world image then.
Not really. And here's the thing.
Okay.
Walt highlights this statistic. 7% of Arabs see the U.S. playing a positive role in this.
7%.
7%. That's it.
Wow.
That's astounding.
I'd be worried if my last tweet got that kind of engagement.
Exactly.
Let alone a foreign policy decision with
Right.
global implications.
Yeah. And it really speaks volumes.
So we're seeing this theme.
What's that?
Realists aren't just saying war is bad.
Yeah.
They're saying, here's why this is counterproductive.
Exactly. And costly.
Right.
This is billions of dollars.
Yeah.
That could be going to other things.
Right, like what? Climate change.
Exactly.
Shoring up alliances.
Yes.
Dealing with China.
All of it.
So it's not just about the money either.
Right.
It's about the attention.
Yeah.
This is a distraction from other things that matter more.
It's like you're putting out a fire in your kitchen,
Yeah.
but your living room's flooding.
Right, you can't focus on both.
Exactly.
And speaking of things that make a realist sweat,
Uh-oh.
let's talk about China and Russia.
Yeah.
They're probably enjoying this.
Oh, yeah.
A little too much.
This is great for them.
So how are they capitalizing?
Okay.
And what does this say about America's place in the world right now?
All right. So buckle up, Buttercup, because this is where it gets good.
So we're talking about Russia and China benefiting from this. Like, I think we all know those two are never going to pass up a chance to, step into the spotlight. But how does this conflict actually play into their hands?
Where it really plays into this narrative they've been pushing, especially in the global south,
Okay.
that the U.S. is this destabilizing force.
Too focused on these conflicts that don't really help global stability.
Yeah, it's like while we're over here pouring resources into this, they're out there making deals,
Exactly.
building relationships.
And Walt uses this great anecdote in the piece.
Okay.
Imagine. Top U.S. officials totally consumed with the Gaza situation.
Right.
Meanwhile, Chinese diplomats are on a world tour.
Oh, yeah.
Strengthening ties in Africa, Asia, Latin America.
Right.
Really solidifying their place in the world.
Yeah, it's like they're playing chess.
Exactly.
And we're stuck on checkers.
And that perception of declining U.S. influence,
Yeah.
that's almost as powerful as whatever the reality is.
Right, because if enough people believe it.
Exactly. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So it's like, by going all in on this, we might actually be shooting ourselves in the foot. That's what Walt's arguing.
In terms of power, in terms of image.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It really is.
Yeah, well-
So what do we do with this information? This isn't just some academic debate, right?
Right, this is the world we live in.
Exactly. So someone's listening to this, right? How does understanding this realist perspective help them make sense of what's going on?
It gives you the tools to ask the right questions.
Okay.
Like, who benefits from this?
Right.
What are the long-term consequences?
Yeah, are we thinking about that?
Right. And maybe most importantly, are there other options?
Things we're not even considering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in the immediate situation.
Right. We're not thinking 10 moves ahead.
And that's what this realist perspective pushes us to do.
To look beyond the headlines.
Beyond the sound bites.
Right. To think for ourselves. And speaking of thinking for ourselves,
Yeah.
Walt ends on a pretty bold note.
What's that?
He questions whether this unwavering support for Israel
Okay.
is always the best thing for America.
Wow.
Which is kind of a big deal to say out loud,
Okay.
given how sensitive this whole issue is.
Right. And that's exactly why it's important to talk about.
So if we entertain that thought for a second,
Okay.
if maybe that's not always the best approach,
Right.
what would a more nuanced strategy look like?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Is that even possible?
I think it's a question we all need to grapple with.
Yeah, it's so easy to just focus on the crisis right in front of us.
Right.
But this realist perspective forces us to zoom out.
Exactly.
Think long term.
What does the future look like?
And remember, there might be options we haven't even considered.
Because we get stuck in these old ways of thinking.
It's like Walt saying, look beyond the headlines.
Don't just react.
Don't take the bait.
Really think about what a better approach looks like.
And that's what this is all about, right?
Exactly.
It's not about memorizing facts.
This is about giving you a new lens,
Yeah.
a new way to see the world.
To understand that foreign policy, it's not just this abstract thing,
It affects all of us,
whether we realize it or not.
and we owe it to ourselves
Yeah.
to ask these
We
questions,
should have these conversations,
even when they're hard.
even when it feels uncomfortable.
That's where the growth happens.
Exactly when we challenge our own assumptions.
Get out of those echo chambers.
That's how we learn.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, we've given everyone a lot to think about today.
We really have.
Explored this realist perspective on the war in Gaza.
Unpacked those core arguments.
Hopefully inspired some folks to keep digging.
Keep asking those tough questions.
And maybe look at the world a little differently.
That's what we're here for.
So until next time,
Happy diving, everyone.
we'll see you out there.